Welcome to Coffee and Conversation at Hampton 3 Gallery. We're here with Dave Appleman and his granddaughter Alina to do a show about sculpture and painting and some sketches. So without further ado, I'm going to introduce Dave. Dave, how long have you been an artist?
Probably since I was a little boy. I always enjoyed working with clay and doing paintings. So I just always had that desire.
You started with cowboys, right, with the clay?
Well, I don't know whether it was cowboys or what. There were some animals.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah, and I can remember as a little boy, I mean, I probably was 5 years old, making some clay things, and some visitor came in and said, "Oh, I like your little clay things," so that made a good impression.
And you were born in Ohio, right?
Mansfield, Ohio, about 70 miles north of Columbus. Came down to Bob Jones in 1961. Been here ever since.
Wow, and you took up a teaching position, right?
Yes, after I graduated. I actually went back to Ohio and taught 7th grade art for 1 year, and that was enough. So I got a letter inviting me to come down and actually take over some of the advertising for Bob Jones University, as well as teach part-time. So that kind of got me started, and I was fortunate or blessed to have Carl Blair, Darrell Coons, and Emery Bopp as my instructors.
Yeah, and for those of you who don't know, those three artists Dave just mentioned were the founding artists here at Hampton 3 Gallery. That's why we're called Hampton 3 Gallery. Those three artists started this gallery with my grandfather in around 1970, so we've been here a minute. When did you come into the gallery, Dave?
Well, I think it's probably 1 or 2 years after they actually opened.
Wow.
I was invited in, so been here ever since, if they still want me.
Of course. And you've talked a little bit about how design really influences your work. You want to talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, I've never considered myself as an intuitive kind of painter. Now, there is a difference between my sculpture and painting. The sculptures are intuitive. I don't know where I'm going when I start, but the paintings are drawn out. I do have sketches. I will draw them on the canvas, and then I can tell you more about that procedure if you have questions, but those are not intuitive to a point. There is some changes that I'll make along the way. But the sculptures are intuitive. The paintings are more thought out and designed. I've done graphic design, so I suppose that's part of the relationship why I like the design rather than I'm not a painter like Carl Blair was. Probably more along the lines of Darrell Coons because he was very controlled in his work.
And what got you into the design side of working?
That's a good question. I suppose when I came to Bob Jones, I was more interested. Well, I was doing their advertising, so of course that was designing posters, pamphlets, and all that to be able to promote the university. I'll tell you a little story. When I was in grad school, I had a class from Carl Blair, and it was in preparation for a graduate exhibition. And it was kind of class where it's, you just go in and it's, show me your work kind of a thing. And there was a few things that really weren't very good. But I in my room, I stretched a canvas. It was about probably close to 4 foot square and did a painting which was abstract forms in blues, kind of blue tones. And I brought it into the class. And Carl Blair just about said, "Do more of these." That's one of his kind of comments, "Do more of these." So I kind of hit something there that I knew was a good direction, and that kind of kept me going. And that painting is still in town here somewhere. It was in one of the bank buildings. Last I saw it, I had a retrospective show, I think, at Bob Jones, and I was able to find that painting. They had it in a storage closet, so that's, shows you how good my work is. Anyway, that got me started on what we call the hard edge paintings.
And 3 of those hard edge paintings are actually owned by the Johnson Collection. We were working with them on a project recently, and I was looking through them, and they are gorgeous, Dave.
Oh, thank you. Thank you.
One of them's a flower form, and one of them's almost subterranean.
Is it the red one with the?
No, it's. I think it's an Appalachian scene. It's dark green and blue.
Okay, it's more of a vertical kind of.
Yes, yeah.
That was an earlier painting, and apparently they liked that. So I need to try some earlier paintings.
And then I'll switch to Alina. When did you start drawing? How young?
Oh, goodness. I think I started when I'll echo my grandfather's answer, about as young as I can remember, but it just it grew from there, and it became something that was less of a hobby to me, less of child drawings that you stick on a fridge with a magnet, and more of something I wanted to express myself with and the way I saw the world around me. It grew into something that I truly loved instead of something that was just what everybody else did. Every kid draws from time to time. Every kid wants to have some form of expression. They just don't necessarily know which one is the right one for them yet. And I really found a big way to express myself through art, through drawing. And it evolved from pencil into ink, which I prefer the finality of.
And for the ink, do you have a weapon of choice? Is there a specific pen you really like? Because that's tricky to find a good pen.
I like
Micron,
Pigma Micron pens. I know a lot of ink artists prefer to work with fountain pens. And there are a lot of different types of fountain pens. I find it very, very interesting to get into the rabbit hole of research that is fountain pens. But I never found that for my particular style with hatching and cross-hatching, it was quite what I needed. So, yeah, I went the typical cartridge pen route, my specific weapon of choice.
And then how did you develop the hand skill necessary to make all those really delicate crosshatches? That's a tricky thing to develop.
Anxiety. Honestly, it's just something that I'll usually stick on some classical music and just try to relax myself as much as possible so I don't get shaky, because it is very easy to panic yourself into shaky lines. I've done that on more than one occasion. And then that's the only thing you see when you go back and look at the drawing is the one shaky line you made. So just trying to steady your breathing as much as possible. I typically use a glove on one side of my hand that is typically used for digital art as well, so my hand slides across the paper better when I'm doing long, straight lines. It gives me that extra smoothness that I need.
Speaking of smooth lines, Dave.
May I say something about Elena and Danielle, my daughter? I had Danielle in school, in class, and she always regretted that, but anyway. she having Elena do her drawings and things, she would come to me and ask me, what about this? And I think that at the beginning, one of the things with her drawings we emphasize is try to get more variety of your darks and lights, which she was very teachable and with that. And I want to thank Sandy for having Elena, because
Yes.
that was very gracious of her. And I just thought it would be a start for Elena. And I feel that she has a natural ability for proportions, perspective. There's something there that it just comes naturally to her. I think she can draw better than I can.
And it's our pleasure, because this gallery's focus is really about South Carolinian art. You have to focus on the next generation, or the tradition that is South Carolinian art will fade out. A lot of the artists that we've had in this gallery are teachers, and they came to South Carolina to teach, often from all over. You're from Ohio, New York, Pennsylvania, all over the United States. And some of them are from South Carolina originally, but we really do focus on a lot of teacher-student relationships. Ed Rice is one of the artists that shows here, and his student, Luke Allsbrook, is shown very closely to them. And they're very different. And you'll see that the two artists I have with me, their art is very different, but there are some similarities, specifically, I think, the beautiful line making. Because, Dave, you freehand all of your, I think a lot of people look and think that you were doing something very specific to get those lines, but you're doing that all freehand.
I don't like tape. Well, when you use tape, it usually leaves a ridge, too. I don't like that. So I brought two brushes, the kind of brushes I use, mainly. This would be for larger areas. This little brush, these are chisel edge brushes, and I will use it just to clean up the edge. And it takes time, but I don't like tape, so that's the way it is.
But I don't think you could achieve the surface smoothness that you get if you use tape. I totally agree, because there's such a smooth silkiness to the surface of these works. And then how many layers do you usually lay down of color?
The process, I will take a canvas as it's already gessoed, and I'll pencil draw the drawing, and then I'll paint it again with gesso. The line will come through enough so they don't have to worry about it, coming through the paint. And then I will paint areas thinking about not just the colors, but the relationship of the colors. But I'll paint it once, and then I paint it again. And the second time through is making the adjustments, maybe even changing a color sometimes. But values, intensities, those are the second time through is that adjustment. And once in a while, maybe painting a third time. And some of these paintings will change as I go. It just doesn't seem like something's quite right, so I might just redraw a little area and paint that. But all of them are painted at least twice.
And when did you start making them? When did you start doing paintings in this style that we're seeing today?
I mentioned about Carl Blair's class, and that really was the beginning. I've done some paintings that are not floral. The basis is growth, things that are growing. And I'll tell you a little story about when I was, a little boy, and this was probably, I was maybe 3 years old or something. I had a book, storage area upstairs where I was born, the house I was born in. And there were some little books in there, like there was one about pansies. Pansies are all different colors. And that struck me. I still remember looking at that book and thinking about, boy, look at all the colors in those pansies. And that I think was an influence about why I like color and why I like growth. And some of the paintings may not be floral. There are some abstract painting. I have probably, 3 different directions I could go with my work. There's abstract things. I don't feel like I've developed that to its fullest. I have some sketches beyond what I've done. Circle, square things, and the floral type things. And then there's another style. They are like slices of earth, flat, balanced out shapes. So, and I've not explored that. So I don't think I'll ever get to the end of exploring a lot of those things.
Yeah, most artists we talk to that are well into their career, usually the comment that I hear over and over again is, I think I'm just starting to figure it out.
Yeah.
And then how does the line making that you do with your paintings affect your sculptures? Because they both really share when you do abstract shapes like you do, you have to be confident that mark is right. And it has to be self-assured from the artist when it's whatever medium you're doing, whether it's a painting or a sculpture. How are you sure when you make a mark?
Well, sometimes I'm not, but there is a correlation between the paintings and the sculptures, because the sculptures, I'm aware of movement, I'm aware of the contour lines and how they relate to each other, the shapes themselves. So there is a very strong correlation between the two. One is 3D, one is flat, but there's the shapes, there's the movement, there's the linear quality. It all has to relate. And when I'm doing a piece of sculpture, I'm very aware of how that, we'll say, outline affects the total piece. When I do a sculpture, I'm working on a platter that rotates. And the whole time I'm working on that, I will turn that, and I'll turn it, and I'll see what that does, and I'll see what these lines do to the rest of it. So it's a process of turning and turning it. I don't know where I'm going a lot of times. Birds started, I don't know why. Maybe it was Carl Blair's influence, because he did some of these kind of birds, but they were totally different. I don't know where the bird thing came from, but I've done some that are just plain forms, which is fine. It may be when I start a piece, I may just think, well, this is not going anywhere. It's just forms. So excuse me. But a lot of times it's I can see, okay, here's maybe a wing that's starting, or here's a form that looks bird-like, and then just keep going with it. I just jump in and start carving.
And then how do you select your stones? Because your stone selection is exquisite. You have a very good eye for stones.
Well, there's a long story with where I get those stones. I'm not going to reveal it. But they came out of the woods, a whole truckload of it one time. I still have some of it. I'm still working on it. But the stones, there's the soapstone, had a variety of colors, and then it also have a variety of hardness in it. Sometimes within the same stone it gets very hard, and then sometimes soft. And I did bring this grinder because this is my beginning tool. This is a diamond blade. I just start cutting, and I wear a full face mask and a jumpsuit. It gets pretty dusty, but anyway, this is the tool to start to rough it out. After roughing it out, getting to a certain place where, okay, I'm going to start maybe these rasps, files. coarse files. I start filing it down. I may interchange some of the grinding with some of the filing, and finally it may be smoother files and then into different grades of sandpaper. It's just a process. The soapstone is probably easier. The pink stone or the red stone is called pipestone, and that comes from out west. Indians used to carve that to make their peace pipes or whatever you want to say. And that's a nice stone to carve. I don't particularly like to do marble. It's too work intensive for me. Where is that one white piece? That thing took me forever. And I almost gave up on it.
I'm glad anyway,
you didn't. It's a lot of work. There is a story that I can tell you that there was a lady, I don't know whether I'm rambling. There was a lady that had contacted me, email. It's been about 4 or 5 years ago. She moved down here from, I think it was New Hampshire or somewhere up there, and she came off of a farm, and they had a sidewalk that had marble. And she brought with her 2 pieces of marble from that farm that apparently they sold the farm. She wanted to know if I could do something for her out of that marble. I wasn't really all that enthusiastic about doing it. Because 2 reasons. I really, marble for me is hard to work with. Also, these were stones that were sitting out in the yard, and I didn't know what they were like. Could have had cracks in them, and one of them did. She was very nice, and she said, well, if you did something, what would you charge? So I gave her a reasonable price. I'm not going to do it for nothing, but so she said, well, that'll be fine. She said, I don't have any time span. You can do whatever you want. Just, do something for me. And I started one of those, and I thought, wow. But actually, it was a bird. It came out to be a bird, and I was very pleased with it for some reason. But I thought I was lucky. Anyway, she really liked it, and she had it. Well, that was the one stone. It took me a couple months really to just decide, okay, I'm going to do this. And that came out. She was very pleased. She said, I had that other piece, and she said, well, now, whenever you get time, you just decide to do something on that piece. So I think it was another 6 months or so. So I thought, okay, I'll do that. And wouldn't you know, another bird came out of that, and it was pretty nice. So she's got 2 birds of mine somewhere. Anyway, that was a relief.
Yeah, I think people are often surprised where artists get their materials. Like John Acorn, who we also have here, is another sculptor. He uses trailer nails, and he bought like a world supply of trailer nails that you can't get anymore for some reason because he just found them and he liked them. Leo Twiggs, one of his fabrics that he got from Walmart. He found a floral pattern in a display for one time. Some of his most unbelievable pieces are on that floral pattern, and you'd never know that. I'm always surprised sometimes, like, where artists get the materials.
I have a story about that.
Oh, yeah? Go ahead.
This painting, that painting, they're canvases that I bought at a yard sale, estate sale. They were stretched, already gessoed. My daughter was with me. It was an estate sale. We went the last day, and you could see into the house through the front door. And I saw those canvases sitting down there. I said to my daughter, go right away, stand by those and say they're sold. There were 5 of them. I still have 3 more paintings to do. So that was an incentive. You got to use those because you paid for them. But they were very reasonable price, and try to make one of those.
Oh, it's tough.
Yeah. Anyway, that's the story.
Well, going in between 2D and 3D, Dave, because your design paintings are very flat. They have a 3-dimensionality to them, but they have also a beautiful flatness. And then you have such a good eye for 3D. But Lena, your perspective is amazing. Most artists can't have really a difficult time getting the structure of a face and understanding all the contours and where the light hits it and all of those things. So how do you approach the 3-dimensionality of a face when you sketch it?
First off, thank you. I appreciate it. I think, honestly, it comes from something very simple, which is just the fact that I really love people. So I like looking at their faces. I've always liked studying people's faces. And it's always been something that interested me maybe more than anything else. It's just people's faces, the expressions that they can make, the emotion that they can convey in adjustments so simple. Like, the face carries so much emotion. It's just always fascinated me. But I think just study of people's faces with genuine interest is what's gotten me to the point of being able to adjust proportions even when I can tell that they're off. You know, a lot of times we can look at a drawing, and if it's supposed to be realistic, we can tell, like, there's something wrong with it. It's identifying what that thing is that's the difficulty a lot of times, and it's still, I think it's something that will be a struggle for realistic or semi-realistic artists to the end of time. Yeah, just enjoying people's expressions, enjoying how much they can convey in their faces has been what's fueled me to learn more and to study more and to figure out everything that makes a face unique. And that goes for each individual drawing, too. It's not just across the board.
Yeah, you make an excellent point. I've been working a lot recently with Philip Morseberger's work, and I recently went through his sketches when he was at the Ruskin School in Oxford, his life sketches, and they're exquisite, true-to-life sketches. Like, his hand was incredible. But when you look at his art, it's very cartoony and loose, but that precision is actually what's informing the weighting and the perspective of those flat pieces. And I think you're absolutely right, is knowing when to be wrong on purpose.
Exactly. Well,
is the hardest thing to do when you sketch a face.
Yeah, but okay, so here's what I love so much about certain artists like that, where they have a spin of the abstract to their art, is you'll find that with artists who can do that well, they always have some drawings or sketches tucked away that are super realistic and that are so true to life, and they've really just studied and thought out and processed exactly how the world works, how our environment affects things around us and affects people and anatomy and everything like that. They've always done this high level of study to all of those things, and it's the only way they're able to break the rules is because they know all the rules. And it's something that's always fascinated me. I love that. I love knowing those rules, just constantly being curious about that. So you can twist things and bend them and make them more interesting.
Oh yeah, my favorite rule that Morseberger, and if you guys have not seen his work, it's just behind. This directly relates to what you're talking about. When he was doing his sketching at Oxford in the Ruskin School, his teacher got really frustrated with him because he was painting a model and, you know, he had all the flesh tones just right. And his teacher was like, "Why are you doing it like that? It's wrong." And he's like, No, look, I've nailed it. And he's like, No, it's blue. And he's like, "What are you talking about?" And his teacher got so frustrated that he took a big dab of blue paint and smacked it on the model's face and then walked away. And then Morseberger looked down, back up, and all of a sudden he saw the blue light coming in and hitting the model's face. So when you look at his portraits around the gallery and you see these oranges and greens and reds and blues, all of the light hitting your faces right now are mixed of all those colors. And if your eye adjusts strongly enough, you can see that breakdown. So they're realistic, but they're exaggerated. So that I think really good art helps you see better.
Could not agree more.
Yeah, it helps you, it adjusts somebody whose eyes are not adjusted to see color better. And kind of going along that note, Dave, your soapstone, so colorful. And the way that you carve it really does accentuate the colors of the stone. It has great respect for the stone itself. How do you approach orienting the grain of the stone so that you can achieve that?
That's kind of a difficult question because I really, when I'm doing it, I'm not paying that much attention to the color in the stone. Maybe it's subconscious. I have a doubt sometimes that maybe the color is a hindrance to the form.
No. At least not from my perspective. I love the color.
Well, I'm glad to hear that because I really don't think that much about the color in the soapstone at the time.
Well, maybe that's why it comes through so well, because you're not being precious with it. Do you think that might be it?
It could be.
Because, I mean, even especially the white marble piece, you have just the right angle of the line of the marble. It's offset going with the neck of the bird to feel like the bird is bending from even the line of the stone. And if you look at the other pieces, you'll see very similar lines within lines of the stone, where the bird that's right in front of me, there's a beautiful yellow line going right against the sharp cuts you've made at the bottom of the wing.
It's interesting because it's something I really haven't thought about.
But that's one of my favorite aspects of your work is that mixed piece there. You have the line going sideways and then a slight down sweep on the red.
Thank you for educating me on this.
No, no. Honestly, I think you know that. You just know it so well you don't know that you know it.
Anyway, thank you.
We'll wrap up this and then we'll get to questions. I have one last question for both of you. It's the question I try to always ask, which is why? Why art? What do you want to do with it?
Well, that echoes the answer to my previous, I think 2 questions ago. It's just I enjoy making people come alive in a new way on paper. And I think that's, in a certain way, that's every artist's thing, is they want something to come alive on a canvas or in a sculpture or on paper. We're just trying to bring something to life the way we view it and the way we see beauty in interesting things. I've noticed that about artists, like my wonderful grandfather. And he brings out life in things that I never could have expected. And I love that. I love that about artists universally, is they see intrigue in things. They see life in things, and they pull it out of that. And I think I know that's why I do what I do, and I think that's why a lot of artists do what they do.
I don't know what I'd do if I couldn't do artwork. It's just something that I need to do, I guess. And I admit I really don't do it to please anybody, except maybe myself, because it's something I have to do. It's an expression. It's how I express myself. I don't know. It's just if I couldn't do artwork, I suppose I'd go garage sailing. No, it is. It's there's sometimes when I really get tired of doing it, but then when I'm in it, it has to be a way of expressing. Like I said, I'm not a philosopher either. I can't really explain my artwork. I don't really have a philosophy of why I should do this. It's always interesting to me that when people start talking about artwork, they philosophize. And it's something I don't think about, and it's something when I'm doing it, I just want to do it, and if there's a philosophy behind it, that's fine. I'm a little afraid nowadays that the philosophy overrides the creativity. There's too much thought ahead of time about why am I going to do this, or what is this supposed to reflect, or what it is. I don't know that that's a good approach. I suppose it works. I suppose it's good. But for me, it's not. I don't like to think about, why am I doing this? No, I'm just doing it. I don't have, well, I do in a way, growth. It's a basic thing, or beauty, or color. But I don't really get into the thought of, I'm doing this to express this particular feeling because today they're doing this kind of thing and I want to make an expression about what's going on. No. Just do it.
Yeah, well, I think there is something, and I think this kind of ties both of your work together, is there's a beauty in just documenting something for its own sake without commenting. Just showing it as it is and going, isn't this great? And then helping somebody see that object or that color or that pattern in a way they didn't see before. Gregory the Great, one of my favorite lines from him is he's like, through art and the visual arts, that's how people that can't read. Because in that time, most people were illiterate. So he's like, if you want to teach people to read, you use art. It helps people see and think and read better. And I think your art helps us see flowers and birds and stones better. And Alina, we see faces better because of how you capture them. And so with that, well, let's open up the question. Oh, Sandy has a question.
Well, it's just something I thought. Oh, I'm sorry.
I'll do that. I'll repeat it. Sandy wants to know why this painting is so intense right behind you when the others are not as much.
Well, I just told myself the others are rather maybe more subtle or calm, and I thought I need to do something that really challenges me with color, brilliant color. So when I started that painting, I started with brilliant yellow and go from there. So I just challenged myself, do something where you really knock people over with the color. I'm a little afraid of it in a way. Yeah, it's
I love it.
Well, maybe I shouldn't say that, but, cartoons are real colorful and everything. I think that might be too cartoonish. I don't know. Well, it was a challenge to me. I thought, I got to do something. I got to challenge myself with brilliant color. And when I'm doing a painting, it's kind of a process. I mean, the first time through it might be the wrong color. It's too dark. It's too light. It's too intense. All of that has to be adjusted during the final time. And also the paint that I use, acrylic, and I will take paint out of the tube and I will mix it, and I don't put any water, anything in it. Just mix it up until I think it's right, because the minute I put water in there, it gets lighter. You mix it up with water, and it's not the same color that you mixed without water. And then when you paint it, it will come down to the color that you want, which is kind of tricky, because maybe sometime I had to paint something 3 times because it just didn't quite come down. And when you're painting one color next to another, you have to watch the intensity and the value relationship. But there's some that I had to paint in here because the value and intensity was too close, and you couldn't tell. It was a different color, but you couldn't tell where the separation was. So there's a lot of very subtle things that happen when you're painting.
I have to say that I think not necessarily my favorite, one of my favorite aspects of your work is just how good the values are. And that is something that many, many artists really struggle with and have difficulty finding success in achieving the right values. I come from filmmaking, so value is like super important to me to create contrast between subjects and forms. I don't think many artists spend as much time on questions of value as you do in your work.
My daughter, I mentioned, took a composition theory class. I taught color theory for many years. And there was a project in there that they really had to be careful about value relationships and intensities. And I think that helped me in teaching that, to really realize how subtle relationships.
Yeah, I was talking to Leo Twiggs recently, and he said that if you're an art teacher, it helps you think through those questions more and more, because you have to keep thinking through them every time you teach them. Have you found that with your teaching? Because you taught for quite a while, didn't you?
Marianne, how long did I teach? 42 years.
Oh, just a handful.
So anyway, yeah, you learn a little bit over time. Anyway, yeah.
Because a lot of our finest artists in this gallery were teachers. That tends to be the uniting factor between a lot of the artists that reach the top of their game. They were dedicated teachers. Any other questions, comments, concerns? Go ahead.
You mentioned your sense of design.
I'll repeat that question. Has your faith influenced your work?
Yes. There's a painting downtown at the First Pres Church right now. It's about 6.5 feet tall. A lot of symbolism, and so I wanted to do that to express my faith. It's called King of Kings and Lord of Lords. It's an altar piece. And I've done, I don't know whether you're aware of any of the prints that I've done. They're colograph prints.
My parents have one. They're great.
Yeah, they're actually religious in a sense, because they may look floral, and they may look, but there is a cross theme in there, the cross. Whether these kind of things, I think just creation and just showing basic artistic principles of design and creation. I don't want to drift into something that doesn't have solid principles, artistic principles in it.
Any other questions? Go ahead, Danielle.
It's an interesting question, a good question. I right now am thinking I should be doing a sculpture piece. I've got this stone sitting out back, and I think I need to do a sculpture piece. But then on the other hand, I've got these 3 canvases that I need to paint sometime. So I need to do a painting. I don't know that it's a real conflict. I guess it's actually motivation. And it is a change, I guess. Rather than painting all the time, I mean, that's hard work. I mean, I'm taking this little brush, and I'm painting these edges. And I'm intense doing that. And the illustration I like to use is if you've been driving all day for about 8 hours by yourself and you finish and you go stay somewhere, what are you thinking? I'm still driving on the road. I'm still driving. I got that feeling with this painting because I was pushing myself, and it's just like this. I go to bed at night and I have this feeling like I'm still painting. So, yeah, that's a good break. Like right now, maybe I feel like I could do a sculpture piece and get a break from painting for a while. So I think it's actually an advantage to me to have different things. I also do jewelry work. And that is another kind of a break. I'm wanting to do some more, but I have to do some of these other things first. That was good. I appreciate that question because it is kind of a situation where, what do I want to do next? Maybe it's not good because it's too many things I want to do. I always kind of said I've never really found what I want to do.
I don't know. I'm similar. I like bouncing back and forth.
Yeah.
Because I think it gives your brain a rest and time to think through the one that you're not doing. It lets you kind of do the background subconscious thinking on a sculpture if you're on a painting, or vice versa. At least in my experience, I prefer to work that way. Any other questions before we wrap up? Comments, concerns, gripes?
Have you found that the shape?
Do you find that the shape language that you've used over time, has it changed, or do you use like a consistent shape language across your career? Like how you think about shapes and use them in your work?
I don't think there's been a change. And I'm not, until I'm actually doing it, I'm not that conscious of the shapes. I just want a good relationship of them. So it's not a matter of I have this language of shape language. It's just something that I want to have look right together.
All right. With that, we'd like to thank you all for coming. And thank the two fine artists here with me.
Thank you.
Thank you.